We on Fire Sports Podcast, The Spot, season number 4, episode number 27. And man, I hope you guys have had a great midweek. Hope you guys will be able to kick back and enjoy the sporting landscape. If it's your first time listening, man, I appreciate the check-in. We on Fire Sports Podcast, The Spot. We provide high-fire takes and analysis across the sporting landscape. And if you're an OG of the show, man, I appreciate the check-in once again. And there's been a lot of things that have jumped off across the sporting landscape over the last 48 hours or so. Last time I checked in with you guys. And it's Super Bowl week. Finally in the Super Bowl week, we had Super Bowl opening night on Monday night, which used to be called Media Day. And it was a good look, man, just to check out the players, man, letting their hair down and so forth, man, and just a little friendly atmosphere before they kick it off and jump it off on Sunday between the Kansas City Chiefs and the Philadelphia Eagles. So definitely coming up, man, I'm going to get my little takes across the matchups across the board in the Super Bowl number 59 down in New Orleans. Also, too, man, it's been just straight trade mania across the board. And I'm going to keep it on the football tip real quick before I jump into the NBA. You know, Myles Garrett, the ultra defensive end from the Cleveland Browns, he's put his name out there saying that he wished to be traded out of Cleveland. And it was funny because, I was watching the Hard Knocks thing that they had with the AFC North. And it was interesting when they went to Cleveland, and I know they had asked him a couple questions, the press did, as far as, what he felt the organization was doing moving forward. And he was a little coy about it. And I had suspicions then that this guy was unhappy. In my opinion, man, Myles Garrett he could easily be, he's definitely a top 3 defensive player in the National Football League. I think he's the best defensive end in the National Football League, man. This guy's a cyborg. And so he's put his name in the hat saying he wants out of Cleveland. Not sure what the Cleveland Browns will do. They got a high draft pick coming up. They may pivot to a quarterback situation up there in Cleveland with the whole Deshaun Watson fiasco. So we'll definitely see what it do. There's been a lot of speculation as far as where he may go. Now, Cleveland, they put it out there that they have no interest in trading Myles Garrett. I assume Cleveland was going to take that position. He's the best player on the football club right now. But Cleveland, they're in transition, man, and they're in one of the hardest divisions in the National Football League, the AFC North. But they definitely got to get a quarterback, man. At this point, Deshaun Watson with the ACL setback, he's going to be out all the next season. So it's time for Cleveland, one, to pivot to, one of these quarterbacks in the draft, whether it be Cam Ward, whether it be Shedeur Sanders. They definitely got to make a decision up in Cleveland what they do moving forward. So we'll see as this thing unfolds a little bit, the situation out in Cleveland, if they do decide to trade this guy. As I mentioned, this is just a lot of speculations, man. There's a lot of teams that need a stout defensive end. It's too many to name right now, man, but we'll see what that situation develops into moving forward up there in Cleveland. Then we go to the West Coast a little bit, and Cooper Kupp, the wide receiver, he won a Triple Crown a couple of years ago. The Los Angeles Rams, they put him on a trading block, and Cooper Kupp, he's been banged up over the last couple of seasons. Now he's in his 30s. He was electric, man, with Matt Stafford, man, one of the best wide receivers in the league a couple of years ago. I still think he got a little tread left on the tires, man, but in the NFL stands for not for long. And so we'll see what the Rams try to do to get him off and trade him. Not sure what his interest will be across the rest of the National Football League. I'm not sure what, the Rams may get for him in return. I think at the end of the day, it may be, potentially a mid-round pick for him. So we'll see what that situation do out there in Los Angeles for the Los Angeles Rams and Kupp. He came out, man, just saying that he didn't agree with the decision. He wanted to spend the rest of his career out there in Los Angeles. It's a great place to live, man, and just a great lifestyle. So we'll see what it do moving forward for Cooper Kupp. And now we get into the NBA, man. And the NBA's got its own hot trade market jumping off. And, we just had the breaking news a little bit earlier today with Chris Middleton was traded to the Washington Wizards for Kyle Kuzma. And, I just think that the Milwaukee Bucks, man, they're on the road to nowhere, man. This team has lost, I believe, about 5 games in a row. You got Giannis there, who is arguably, to me, top 5 player in the league easy. And I just think that the Milwaukee Bucks, they've got old real fast. And I think Chris Middleton, he was outstanding in the championship year run that they had. I mean, this guy was the ultimate number 2 guy, putting up big, huge monster games for them. So I know, he's not really happy with the decision to move on to the Washington Wizards. The Wizards have been straight to dumpster fire. I mean, they're the worst team in the National Basketball Association right now. And so I know he's not happy about that. What I'm hearing, it could be a potential buyout situation with him up there in Washington. So he may, be packing his bags for a very short trip up to the nation's capital, and he may pivot it somewhere else. But for Milwaukee and Doc Rivers and just their organization, man, for them to stay competitive, I think this team had to get younger. I had a couple conversations kind of off the record with, people who follow the league, and I just said it straight out. They need a young athletic wing player. And I think Kyle Kuzma could be that guy. He averaged about 15 points a game this year for the Washington Wizards. But I just think that he was playing unmotivated. I mean, the biggest thing out of him coming out of Washington was really his outfits that he wore, during the game, man, coming into the arena. That's about it. And so I think that the Milwaukee Bucks, they may not be done before the trade deadline. But I just think that, for them, it's in their best interest to just move on and get a younger player, man. And Chris Middleton, he definitely will be missed in Milwaukee, man. He's been a good dude. And like I said, he was a solid player for them in their championship run a couple seasons ago. And then we also had, something that's really kind of catching fire, man, up to the hour, is that Kevin Durant could potentially be moved. Looks like the Phoenix Suns is exploring trade situations with Kevin Durant. And Kevin Durant, he's a couple points shy of the 30,000 mark, 30,000 points in his career. I mean, he's one of the greatest scorers in NBA history without question. I mean, he's a first ballot Hall of Famer without question. And he's turned himself now into a nomad, man. I just think that situation in Phoenix is not working out. And I just think that at the end of the day, teams try to put a big 3 together. I think that era of the NBA is effectively over. We see that with, the new collective bargaining agreement and just all the situations with the salary cap and just the cap implications and the luxury tax implications across the league. I just think that the league is trying to phase out that 3-star, situation. And so it was good while it lasted, just in the era of the NBA. It started off with the Boston Celtics with KG, Ray Allen, and Paul Pierce. Then it moved on to Miami with, Chris Bosh and LeBron James and Dwayne Wade. But I think that era of the NBA is over. And for me, just being just a traditionalist of basketball, man, I just think that at the end of the day, organizations and teams win championships. You got to have a solid roster from top to bottom, man, to be able to climb the mountaintop. And Phoenix, they just couldn't get it right. And it's just interesting with Kevin Durant, just a player of his stature, just to kind of see his team just hovering around 500 pretty much for most of the season for Phoenix. And so, word on the street, I'm hearing that the Golden State Warriors, his old employer, was definitely interested in bringing him back into the fold with the Golden State Warriors. Word on the street is that Kevin Durant don't want any part of Golden State again. And so it's just going to be real interesting, man, just to see, like I said, man, for a guy that's just electric and just a great, player as he is, he's turned into a hired assassin at this point. And so I'm unsure what Phoenix is going to do before the trade deadline, man, but it looks like, definitely exploring the situation with Kevin Durant and trying to move forward and move on from him. So we'll see what that thing do moving forward as well. Speaking of Golden State, this is a team that with Mike Dunleavy Jr., the general manager of the Golden State Warriors, he's been aggressive in trying to bring in another superstar out there into San Francisco. And so I think it's the right thing for him to do, just to explore these whole situations. And another, door that they tried to knock on was Jimmy Butler. And, Jimmy Butler expressed his non-interest of joining the Golden State Warriors. Just kind of, told through some back channels that, he had no interest in re-signing with Golden State if they did pick him up. And I just think that we're looking at the end of Jimmy Butler. Meaning that at this point, it's just been a warning shot across the NBA, man, as far as these organizations. Now with these players making annually close to about $70 million a year, is that, they own one right now. And I think Jimmy Butler, he's going to pivot himself into a situation to where, he's going to go to a bottom feeder team that's willing to pay him, willing to try to, sell tickets and so forth. And he's going to be out of a situation of just trying to be competitive and win NBA championships, because that's the only thing left really on his resume, being 35 years old. He's been to 2 NBA finals with the Miami Heat. And so I just think that Jimmy is just sliding down a razor blade into an alcohol river, man. So we'll see, what that do. The last couple days coming up for the trade deadline, man, for the NBA. So we'll see what that bottle spins on for Jimmy Butler. Also, too, man, just another interesting thing. We had the big trade with Luka Doncic and Dallas Mavericks and Anthony Davis. Them trading locales. And there's been a lot of people that's really been optimistic, especially Vegas, man, about the Los Angeles Lakers. They got a lot of work to do still at the end of the day. I mean, the West is still competitive. I do think the Western Conference is up for grabs, but at the end of the day, the Los Angeles Lakers have no rim protection. And so they've been playing actually some good ball over the last, week or so. So I can't front on that end of it. But I just think at the end of the day, Rob Pelinka, the general manager, he got some work still to do with this roster and this ball club, man. So we'll see what they do, moving forward into the NBA trade deadline. I think that the Dallas Mavericks, man, they could be another sneaky team, man. The general manager, Nico Harrison, he made a big swing and a big move and shipping, Luka Doncic up out of Dallas and them, picking up AD in return. And I kind of like what they own right now. Obviously, losing a 25-year-old guy that's a 5-time first-team All-NBA player is going to be a loss. But I just think at the end of the day, you bring in another, Hall of Fame talent in Anthony Davis. I do think it's still some tread on the tires for Anthony Davis. So we'll see what Dallas and Nico Harrison do moving forward just in regards to that situation. And then finally, man, we had the whole situation with my Chicago Bulls. And you guys have to check me out, man. I made another appearance on the Weekly Dog Sports Betting Podcast, man, with my man Macko and Isalim, Mr. Taylor Street, as we chopped up game about the Chicago Bulls trading Zach LaVine. I just think that the Bulls, obviously now they're on rebuild mode. I just think that, a tourist, AK, also to Mark Eversley up there in the front office. I think that it's the start of the ending for them, man. I think at the end of the day, I have no interest in those two gentlemen, being the spearhead guys, just kind of moving this organization forward. I think that at the end of the day, Michael Reinsdorf, the managing partner of the Chicago Bulls, I think it's time for him to pivot to another general manager. And I think they should use this time from now to the rest of the end of the regular season just to make a decision about new leadership up in Chicago. And so that's my look, man. That's my look across the sporting landscape. Coming up, I'm definitely going to chop game on the matchups in the Super Bowl. And finally, man, I do have a little treat for y'all, man. I got a Big 5 coming y'all way, man. My Big 5 Super Bowl games of all time that, man, I know you guys will get a kick out of, man. We'll wrap up the show with that topic, man. See what you guys think about that. And also, too, don't forget to check us out, man. We at We On Fire Sports, man, on Twitter. We also, too, on YouTube. We On Fire Sports Podcast on YouTube. You can definitely check us out as well on Facebook, man. We out here, man. Once again, I appreciate all the love and the feedback. I appreciate your ear. We On Fire Sports Podcast. The spot. Welcome back, and we just had Super Bowl 59 opening night on Monday, and it's just something about the Super Bowl, man, just the big event, the spectacle of the Super Bowl. I had an opportunity actually to go to one Super Bowl, which was the Super Bowl between the then St. Louis Rams and the Tennessee Titans, in Atlanta. Man, it was an epic Super Bowl. A lot of people around the Atlanta area experienced the ice bowl or, just very bad conditions, the day of the football game. But it definitely was exciting, man, just to be able to attend a Super Bowl. And, maybe one day I'll get back to attending the Super Bowl coming up real soon, man. But the one thing about opening night, it kind of gives me that heavyweight championship appeal. Meaning, you get a chance to catch, both teams kind of in the casual wear, just kind of letting their hair down a little bit. You get an opportunity for the media to shoot questions their way. A lot of it is lighthearted as well, which I really appreciate, man. Just get a chance for the players really to take in the moment. Definitely down in New Orleans, which is, a tourist type of town. Great food down there in New Orleans, man. I think everybody that goes down to New Orleans, you spend a lot of time or a little bit of time down there, Definitely gonna gain a few pounds. So it's always cool, man, to see, as I mentioned, just the different personalities of the players. And it's really for the casual fan as well, just for them to check out, the festivities and just get a chance to know these guys, with the helmet off, man. And so definitely was, to me, kind of that heavyweight championship weigh-in type of vibe, type of swag. So, I definitely appreciate that. As we mosey on and we get closer to the game, man, I'm just thinking about just all the matchups and all the X factors. And for me, it started at the top with the two quarterbacks. You got Jalen Hurts, you got Patrick Mahomes. Patrick Mahomes is going for his third consecutive Super Bowl, 3 in a row. For the Philadelphia Eagles and Jalen Hurts, he's trying to scoop up that loose change, man. And, a lot of people kind of, to me, has been downplaying just the revenge factor from Jalen Hurts' standpoint and the Philadelphia Eagles standpoint, because they lost to the same Kansas City Chiefs team a couple years ago in a very, very close football game. A lot of people forget, man, that game came down to the end. The Philadelphia Eagles, they had every chance of winning that football game, and that was a classic in its own. And so I just think that a lot of people kind of forget about that. Obviously the Chiefs have been able since that time period to win, 2 consecutive Super Bowls since then. And, they're, like I said, approaching history just on their end. But, for me, it's just a situation where I just believe that the Philadelphia Eagles, as I mentioned, they got a chip on their shoulder. And the two quarterbacks, I think that at the end of the day, I'm not expecting them to go out there and throw for 450 yards. A lot of people, talk about the magic of Patrick Mahomes. To me, this is his worst statistical season so far this year. And so, he's just been making those what I call timely plays. And so it's not like he's been out there just putting up, Joe Burrow type of numbers, 400 yards and 5 touchdowns and all of that. He just makes those clutch plays, when they need to be made. And you look at their offense, you got DeAndre Hopkins, who, to me, he was borderline Hall of Fame guy, especially when he was down, in Houston. And so I just think that for him, he hadn't really had a good playoffs. And I just think that, that door may open for him in the Super Bowl. I mean, this is the biggest, game that he'll play in his life. And so I just think that he could be a guy that could be low-key, a big X factor in this football game. Number 2 for me, and just going back to the Jalen Hurts side, I think Jalen Hurts, he has the best 2 receivers out of both teams with A.J. Brown and Devontae Smith. I think that Smith, he has an ability to have a big football game. I think that A.J. Brown, he's going to get a lot of attention. I think Smith, if I'm not mistaken, I think the last 2 times that he's played, against the Kansas City Chiefs, he's had some big games in those games. So I just think that for him, that door could open up for him as well, just on the other side. You just look at the other X factors. We go down the running back. You look at Saquon Barkley, who is, man, he's having one of the best playoff runs I've seen of a running back in a long time. It just kind of brings me back to Terrell Davis back in the day, going a little further than that, Marcus Allen, to where he just put the team on his back, man. And it's not because Philadelphia is devoid of talent. It's just he got that one-hitter quitter appeal, man. Just able to take one play, man, and take that thing up 60, 70 yards, man, straight to the house. And so I think that for me, the edge on the running back end would obviously go to Philadelphia just based on the talent. But I think that Pacheco, man, for Kansas City, he's revving up. This guy had a broke leg. He was able to come back off of that broke leg. And I think he's finally now kind of in his bag a little bit. I just think that him and Hunt, I do like the tandem between both of them. I think that Kansas City, they use them well. And, I think that for them, it's more so about just the floor of the game for both of those guys. But, if I had to give an edge to a team, I think it would be, say, the running back position, or that edge would be to Saquon Barkley. And then we trickle on down to the defenses. And both these units make plays. Philadelphia, man, they had the best defense in the league. They was able to, one, solidify their defensive line and just keep adding pieces, man, and just keep adding pieces. Jalen Carter, this guy looking like, man, a reincarnation of Reggie White or Warren Sapp or something, man. What he's done in the playoffs, man, this guy has been a force. And so shout out to him, the other youngin from the University of Georgia as well. Jordan Davis has been playing some good football for them. They got, all pros on the back end. Darius Slay comes to mind. So I like what they're doing. Cooper DeJean, I like what he's doing as well. And then on the other side for Kansas City, I mean, just look at what they've been able to do. Chris Jones, man, and you can just see the fire in Chris Jones, man. You know, he got real emotional, man, making big plays in that AFC Championship game as he went over to the sideline, man, and, you know, got emotional. You know, and this guy comes to get it. And he's one of the most clutch defensive tackles I've seen in a playoff situation, man, in a long time. Just straight coming to get it. And so I think that, you know, with me, when you look at both of the defenses, it's really about scheme. Because, you know, Steve Spagnuolo, the defensive coordinator of the Kansas City Chiefs, you know, he knows when to blitz. He knows when to bring that heat and when not to bring that heat. And I think on the other side for Philadelphia, you know, they may have more talent as a cohesive defensive unit. But, you know, I just think that the edge from a strategic standpoint, I would probably edge towards Kansas City and the Chiefs just in that regard. So, man, this is a heavyweight championship field, man. This is the second time these two teams will meet up in the last 3 years. And that's what it reminds me of, man. It reminds me of just, and then you go back to boxing, man, just Holyfield and Bo, you know, Ali Frazier too. Just, man, just those, you know, fights and matchups that you just salivating at the mouth and you're getting waiting to see. And so, you know, we creeping on along, man. We got, you know, less than half a week now as we mosey on and get closer to the Super Bowl. You know I'm gonna have my predictions coming up in the next episode, man. My official predictions in both of these teams and what I think that, you know, who will come out, you know, victorious in the Super Bowl. But definitely just wanted to kind of just go over what I saw so far, man, as we get into the final week and the final countdown leading up into the Super Bowl 59 down there in New Orleans. You know, I hope you guys, man, have a, you know, good Super Bowl party and a good Super Bowl plan of what you're gonna do, some good eats, you know, some good party favors, whatever you want to do, man. Definitely let your head down, man, and enjoy the spectacle, man. I think that's part of the allure. And you can't forget about the Super Bowl commercials as well, man. Some of the Super Bowl commercials have been epic over the years. And so just this whole swag, man, I'm just geeked up, man. We're finally here to the last game of the year. I think these are the two best teams in the National Football League. They proved it on their way en route down to New Orleans for Super Bowl 59. So we'll see what it do. And first of all, I appreciate all the love and the feedback. I appreciate you. Yeah. We on Fire Sports Podcast, the spot. Yeah, we got Super Bowl 59 coming up between the Kansas City Chiefs and the Philadelphia Eagles. Man, I know both fan bases are stoked for the Super Bowl coming in, and just, you know, as a fan, just overall, man, I'm always happy, man, to see just the Super Bowl matchup, man. It always has that heavyweight matchup appeal as Super Bowl 59 jumps off this Sunday down in New Orleans. And, you know, coming up, man, I just have a little list, man. I just been compiling, man. Whenever the Super Bowl jump off, man, I get nostalgic just across the board, just thinking about overall just the Super Bowl memories that I've had just over the years, man, and just fun memories just across the board. You know, we've seen Cinderella stories with first person that come to mind is just Kurt Warner and just what he was able to do with the greatest show on turf. Just, you know, what they was able to do to win the Super Bowl championship coming out of nowhere. Just plays just across the board. I mean, the Dallas Cowboys, man, running it up against the Buffalo Bills back in the early 90s, and the whole play with Leon Lett getting the ball knocked out of his hand, man, trying to go in and do the Michael Irvin towards the end of that football game. And just the New York Giants taking on the Buffalo Bills in Super Bowl 25, man, and that game coming down to the end, and Scott Norwood missing that kick at the end for the Buffalo Bills. Buffalo still haven't really recovered after that situation, as they was able to get the 4 consecutive Super Bowls in the 90s for them. And so just memories on top of memories, man. Can't forget about Doug Williams in Washington in 1987, man. We had to strike shortened year that year, and for him being the first African-American quarterback to win a Super Bowl, that definitely was a treat just to see. So I've had a lot of good Super Bowl memories just across the board, man. So with that being said, man, I'm going to get into my Big Five Super Bowls across the board that I have seen. And don't be mad, man, because this is a hard list. If I left a Super Bowl out that you think is just on one, you could definitely get at your boy. But, Man, when you got 58 of them to choose from coming in, man, it's definitely a hard task, but we gonna get right into it. At number 5. Now, I ain't gonna front, man. At number 5, man, this is personal. At number 5, man, and just overall, man, this is a unit that a team or a ball club that just had one of the best defensive unit I ever seen. You guys already know where I'm going at with number 5, man. At number 5, I got Super Bowl 20, man. My Chicago Bears taking on the New England Patriots as the Bears was able to win this game 46-10. Just many fond memories just watching this football game, man. Just on the old school floor model, man, in Chicago, man. Just being super cold outside, and just the Bears and just that season, man. They just took over the whole city. I mean, my Lord, man. Just with just the great personalities, whether it be Jim McMahon or Walter Payton or Refrigerator Perry or Richard Dent. I mean, shout out to, Wilbur Marshalls of the world, man. I can just go on and on, man. And just to see just the city just kind of raise up. And, they already had coming into this Super Bowl, had shut out the New York Giants as well as the Los Angeles Rams on their way to the Super Bowl. And just everybody knew, man, that it really was a coordination. And as I mentioned a little earlier, man, this is the greatest defensive unit I've ever seen. Just the amount of pressure, man, that they put on the quarterback, man. They was just trying to kill the quarterback at every snap. You couldn't run the football. In New England, they already knew they had their hands full coming into this game. Ironically, New England went up 3-0 in this football game as Walter Payton fumbled on the first Bears possession. But after that, man, it was straight party time, man. And just remember just being a kid, like I said, man, watching on the old school floor model, man, and just, having just a little Super Bowl party, man, just in the apartment we were living in at the time on the south side of Chicago, man. It just brings back many, many fond memories for me. But at number 5, man, I got my Chicago Bears coming in at Super Bowl 20. And at number 4, man, this was a Super Bowl a couple years later. Got Super Bowl number 23. That's between the San Francisco 49ers and the Cincinnati Bengals. And it's funny because coming into this Super Bowl, man, the 49ers, obviously they were the team of the 80s. But this probably was their worst team just from just that season. They went 10-6 that year. I'll never forget them coming in Chicago, man, and just beating my Bears 28-3. Yeah, I ain't forgot. That was just, man, epic, man, and just upset us, at home. Moved on to the Super Bowl, man, and just at Joe Robbie Stadium down in Miami, and just Joe Montana, Joe Cool. Cincinnati, they had to lead in this football game into the fourth quarter. I'll never forget that. And, Stanford Jennings with the punt return back. Kickoff return back for Cincinnati, man. They took the lead, and it looked like the Cincinnati Bengals and the late Coach Sam White looked like they were going to win a Super Bowl championship. And they put the ball in Joe Cool's hand, man, Joe Montana, and he was able to get down the field with Roger Craig and obviously Jerry Rice and, going with the late touchdown, man, to John Taylor, who was an outstanding wide receiver, by the way. And so this was just an epic Super Bowl from a standpoint, man. It just showed just the greatness of Joe Montana, man. And, until Tom Brady really came on the scene, man, with the 7 Super Bowls, I had Joe Montana as the greatest quarterback I had ever seen, man. Just his guile, man, at the end of football games. I just never really seen a quarterback be as clutch as Joe Cool. But, yeah, at number 4, I got the Super Bowl number 23, man, 49ers and Bengals, man. And at number 3, and I spoke up Tom Brady a moment ago, man. Super Bowl at number 3 is going to be Super Bowl 36. And this was a Super Bowl that the Rams and then the St. Louis Rams, greatest show on turf. This was one of the best offenses I had ever seen, man. Kurt Warner and Marshall Faulk, I mean, they was just a machine. Can't forget about Isaac Hakeem, and can't forget about Isaac Bruce and Torrey Holt. I mean, this team was just a machine, man, offensively. And I just knew that this was a coordination. I just knew that the Rams was going to come in, DDT, make quick work out of the New England Patriots and keep it moving. But this was the birth of Tom Brady, folks. This was the birth of Tom Brady. He replaced Drew Bledsoe midpoint during the regular season after he took that hit from Mo Lewis and the New York Jets. I'll never forget that sideline hit, man. It changed NFL history because Tom Brady came in. He was able to keep the boat afloat for the New England Patriots. They moved into the Super Bowl. And this was just straight Rocky, man. This was a Rocky type moment just for the whole organization. They had never won a Super Bowl before. They had been a couple times before, took a L a couple times before. And this was just the birth of Tom Brady. This is why I got it coming in at number 3. Because I can still never forget, man, John Madden and Pat Summerall calling the game. And shout out to my man, Esau Lean, man, from the Weekly Dog Sports Betting Podcast. Because I never forget, man, me and this guy was riding around in the Atlanta metropolitan area, man, trying to get to the house. And remember listening to the game and on the radio, trying to get to the crib to watch it. And I just couldn't believe what I was hearing, missed kind of like maybe the first half of this football game. And I'm just like, man, the Patriots hanging in this game. And just to get home, man, to see Adam Vinatieri, eventually, kick the field goal, put the icing on top for the New England Patriots, man. Like I said, this was the birth of Tom Brady himself, the legend. And so I got this one coming in at number 3. At number 2. I'm going to take y'all back, man, because I got to give some love, man, to the OGs, man. And number 2, man, I'm going to go way, way back, man. The Super Bowl number 3. Now, I wasn't around doing Super Bowl number 3. This was, the late 1960s. But, man, just watching just the hoopla, just looking back on just the New York Jets as they was able to knock off the Baltimore Colts. And this was the AFC versus the NFC, man. And this is when the NFC, when you had the merger between the two leagues. And, just a situation of where Joe Namath, he was the original Joe Cool. They was an 18-point underdog, man, coming into the Super Bowl, man. And Joe Namath guaranteed down in Miami that they would knock off the Baltimore Colts. A lot of super OGs that followed the National Football League. That Baltimore Colts team was considered one of the greatest, if not people at the time considered them the greatest team ever. You had, Johnny Unitas on that football team. But just what Joe Namath was able to do, man, and just knocking them off 16-7, I think it changed the tide, and it made, the Super Bowl to me kind of what it is. And it made the American Football Conference at the time, or the AFL at the time, a legitimate situation. So I got to take it back, man. The Super Bowl number 3, man, coming in at number 2. And if you guys don't know about that, you guys can definitely go back and check what the whole hoopla about Super Bowl number 3 was all about. But I got to put some respect on that whole situation, man. And I got that coming in at number 2. At number 1. Yeah, at number 1. Finally at the top, man. At number 1, man, I got Super Bowl 51. And if you the Atlanta Falcons, man, or Atlanta Falcons fans, man, I apologize early on this one, man. At Super Bowl 51, we had the New England Patriots take on the Atlanta Falcons, man, and Tom Brady, man. New England was down 28-3. The Atlanta Falcons, they was rolling in this football game. Shout out to Julio Jones and Matt Ryan and Dan Quinn, the coach, and just this team was on one, man. And just remember, being in Atlanta, man, just at a Super Bowl party, man. Shout out to my man Jay Fades, throwing a nice little Super Bowl swing dig, man. And, we had the drink flowing and the food going, and just, it was just going to be exciting to see this organization win their first Super Bowl ever. And it's funny because I just remember watching the game and just thinking like, okay, they got them on the ropes, but they just hadn't hit them with that knockout punch just yet. They just one first down away from just that knockout blow. And they just was never to knock them out. As Tom Brady put on the Superman cape. Shout out to Dante Hightower, man, with the big sack fumble in that football game. It kind of gave New England new life. And Julian Edelman just making plays, and Hogan, the wide receiver, making plays, and James White just being that Swiss Army knife. And can't forget about, Gronkowski in that football game. And New England, man, that was able to get off the mat. It's the biggest Super Bowl comeback in Super Bowl history. It's also, too, the first Super Bowl to go into overtime, as James White was able to score in that football game in overtime, man, for Tom Brady and the New England Patriots, man, to win another Super Bowl on top of the many that he has, 7 overall before he retired. And that's my big 5 Super Bowls, man. And I know there's a lot of Super Bowls, man, I could easily put in there, man. Obviously, speaking of New England, can't forget about Super Bowl between them and the Seattle Seahawks, man, with the big play by Malcolm Butler at the goal line. Also, too, you got the Super Bowl between the Pittsburgh Steelers and the Arizona Cardinals, man. The Steelers was able to come back in that football game with a big play by Santonio Holmes, man, one of the greatest catches in the Super Bowl I ever seen. And so there's a lot of good Super Bowls, man. Can't forget about Dallas and Pittsburgh back in the 70s, man. That was an epic clash. And so there's a lot of Super Bowls, man, I could have put on this list. So this is one of the most difficult Big 5 lists I've ever put together, just in regards. But first and foremost, man, I appreciate all the love and the feedback. I appreciate your ear. We on Fire Sports Podcast. The Spot.